Welcome to Dragon Talk. Mark Hulmes and Kelly Lynne D'Angelo. Hi, you two.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So excited for having both of you here. I can't believe, I think the last time we were all in the same place was at D&D Live 2019, right?
Oh
my God. That
500 years before we met in the favored lands. Yeah,
what
pretty
is
much.
that like?
Literally, we went to hell and then we went to a new version.
Yeah.
And I liked D&D Hell better.
Very much so. Very much so.
Very.
It's been 84 years.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Oh,
It really
yeah.
does.
Time differently, time moves differently. It really does in those planes. Look at this.
Yeah. The pestilence
Yeah.
plane.
Definitely.
Well, both of
Speaking
you-
of time, yes.
Are here because you've spent a lot of time working on Dungeons and Dragons products, especially Candlekeep Mysteries, which is coming out this month, March 16th. Both of you have adventures that you authored in that book, and we're really excited to learn more about that. Of course, reminisce about shows gone past, as well as when we'll get together again in the future. But I'm just really excited about these one-shot adventures. So Kelly, let's start with you. Can you give us like a quick run through of what your adventure is about without spoiling the mystery, if you can?
Yeah, I'll just say, okay, so my one-shot adventure is, it's called The Lore of Larue. It is an enchanted book that maybe takes you on a quest that is in regards to both lore and the history of the Forgotten Realms. You get sucked into it. You go through this really epic adventure through the high forest. And I don't want to give away too much. I'm trying to think of what else to kind of say around these corners. But if you really love magic and if you love mystery, if you love putting together the pieces of puzzle work, not just in the story, but in the sort of fabric of Forgotten Realms and maybe the fabric of history in the high forest itself, definitely check it out. It's a very fun and magical journey.
I love that. What is
amazing.
Larue? Can you tell us what Larue is, or is that part of the mystery?
I think so. Larue is a unicorn goddess. You're gonna tell. It's very clear because if you even look at the book, there's a big old unicorn that's all glittery on it. So you'll know right away when you see it that it has something to do maybe with something magical or something sort of some sort of enchantment is happening. So the mystery begins with that question, which is, who is she? What's going on? And how can we get to the root of the sort of discord that's happening within the high forest? So little hint on that.
That's super
Okay.
cool.
What level is yours?
Level 8-ish, I would say.
Okay.
You want it to, level 6, maybe to level 8. You kind of want them around that group.
Perfect. I have just a weird personal connection because one of the pet names I have for my daughter is Larue, because we used to call her Fiona is her name. We call her Fifi, and then for some reason Fifi Larue is what we called her.
Fifi Larue is a great name.
I think she came out very red-faced, and so we were like, oh, she's Fifi Larue, and so it's been shortened to Larue. And so every single time I think of that adventure that you wrote, I'm like, maybe this has got Fiona's name all over it.
That's adorable.
I love that accidental blessing there. I wrote it for her in mind. I definitely knew all of that.
And she loves unicorns, so it's perfect.
Oh my God. And Fifi
Magic
Larue
fit.
is a great D&D character name, by the way.
That is,
So.
very true. I get halfling vibes from Fifi Larue. I don't know why.
Yeah, I get Kiki Palmer meets halfling vibes. So somewhere in that mix, and I want it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes. Inspired.
So we'll definitely ask more about all that fun stuff. But Mark, what is going on with your adventure for Candlekeep Mysteries?
Okay, so it's kind of funny because mine is also based around a bit of an enchanted book, as I'm sure many of the adventures are. Mine is called The Price of Beauty. And it's a little bit of a kind of sidestep from your typical D&D adventure. It starts off about trying to track down a lost acolyte in Candlekeep who's having a bit of a rough time. And then you discover the price of beauty, and that will lead you to a magical day spa where your characters can enjoy a little bit of a break and maybe take on some fun activities and explore the Temple of the Restful Lily, which is a magical day spa to Suni. And then maybe you'll discover that things aren't quite what they appear to be, and there's maybe something a little bit more sinister going on. And then that is where the whole mystery comes in. And I don't want to say another word because it will give away the whole film at the day spa. So
Is this based on real life at all? Because I want to know what kind of spas you're visiting.
Listen, I couldn't possibly say. So I definitely I want to go back to that spa sometime. So I couldn't possibly talk about it. No, I'm joking. It's meant to be a kind of a good, like a filler episode kind of adventure where like maybe your heroes have been off saving Waterdeep or going through dungeons, and then oh look, a magical book that takes you to a magical day spa. Oh no, bad things are happening. And then that's
you got to be careful, usually exactly. at the spas that I used to go to back in the before times, it was only like 3-year-old issues of People magazine and Us Weekly. So you got to be careful what you pick up at these.
Exactly. Spots. Very much so. Very much so.
I love it. And that is a level 5-ish?
That is a 5th level adventure, yeah. So it's kind of in the same bracket, but I wrote it with 5th level more in mind. So the monsters and everything else are all tailored around that. So
I don't know if you're aware of this, but people, a small group of people will get to preview that adventure at virtual play weekends that are happening in March. Did you know that? I
did hear about this. So I only recently found out about this, but yeah, I saw that my adventure was one of the ones that people could play at the virtual weekend. And it's also, there's a current thing in the UK for Comic Relief where people can win an adventure run by me at a real castle here in the UK when it's safe. And that's all in partnership with Comic Relief. But yeah, the virtual play weekend, I'm very interested to see what people think of it from there, because I do think it is a bit of a different take on a D&D adventure. So I'm kind of interested to see how people respond to it. So
yeah, that's what I love. Like one of the many things that I love about this book is that they're so different. Mm-hmm. All of the so many questions I have, but okay, I'm just going to start rattling some off here.
Go for it.
Did you and the other contributors work together at all on your adventure, or were you all pretty siloed in how you did this?
I can speak from my personal experience. It was definitely intimately done in terms of like me doing a lot of the work and having the support of the D&D staff, specifically Christopher Perkins. But I didn't know who else was collaborating at the time. And
wow!
I was just like kind of like, ooh, who else did they reach out to? Who and slowly but surely, I think we found out one by one or by like an email or like just from word of mouth or something. So
yeah, I was going to say the same thing because I remember when the book got announced and all the big list of creators got announced, I suddenly had DMs from Kelly and Amy and a bunch of other people that I know that worked on it saying, "You worked on this book too? Oh my God." And we were just kind of like talking about it and like, saying like, "Oh, my adventure's 5th level," and, blah, blah, blah. We were kind of talking to each other about it. But yeah, I spoke with Bill Benham, who was like my contact from Wizards, and we were kind of going back and forward on the adventure. But yeah, I didn't know who else was working on it. I would have loved to have kind of picked some brains, but no, I didn't know.
That's a hard part in developing when you have so many voices going on at the same time, and having it all funnel up to Chris is always great. But at the same time, we when we're talking to contributors who are working on, say, Rime of the Frost Maiden, they end up creating their own little whisper networks of trying to figure out like, oh, hey, how does this fit in with the thing that you're working on, and it ends up being this great, almost like a D&D party, everybody coming together and collaborating. So yeah, going forward, we should totally make sure that's easier for everyone to talk amongst themselves.
There was definitely a funny moment where like in the DMs, I was like, did you also struggle with the map? And everyone was like, yes, the map. And it was just like, that was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment just to be like, the camaraderie of like us all trying to create the appropriate maps.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting point, because I think, you two definitely come from the performative aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, right? You certainly play in your home games, but a lot of what people know you for, Kelly as DM for Girls Guts Glory, and Mark, all of your work with High Rollers and all that stuff, as well as Knights of Even Star. So you don't, when you're preparing for those things, you may not think about maps because it's not a visual medium, right? The visual is everyone's faces. So how was it being like writing thing that's not just notes, and making sure that the DMs who are reading this will have the visualization that's in your head? Mark, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, for me, it was a little bit different because we do use maps and every now and then with like high rollers, like either physical maps or we'll do digital maps and things. So I was one of the few people in this group conversation who was just like, I kind of was okay with the map. That was the least scary part for me. It was the actually writing stuff that I thought people would find fun and find enjoyable bit that I was worried about. But it was definitely when I write my games. My notes, and I don't know if Kelly's the same for you, my notes are a mess of just bullet points. It will just be like one word, bullet point, one word, bullet points, and then I run everything from there. And because I know my players so well, we've been playing for such a long time, I know the stuff they like, I know what they're going to enjoy, I know how I can kind of trick them into doing things or not doing things. But writing this adventure was the first time I had to kind of go through it. And I found myself constantly going back and rereading it and saying, does this make sense? Would somebody kind of get that this character is, how this relates to this? And that was one thing I really struggled with, was making sure it was readable to other DMs. And I was really grateful that, Bill and Chris were there to kind of give that feedback. So I think that was the big thing that I needed a lot of the help with, really.
Yeah, and on my side of things, we have a lot of maps, but they're all pre-created maps. Like I have tabletop maps, and I have a lot of beautiful digital maps that are animated and move. I'm a big techie. Like I love technology. Surprisingly, even though Mark has like the coolest setup, I need to get on that side of technology more so in terms of streaming and such. But in terms of implementing it into my D&D gameplay, that's usually what I do. So having to get like artistically creative, it is a skill set that every time I see it, like you should have seen me in 9th grade when I had to take a prerequisite for like art. Like I literally like walked in the door, then turned around and walked out and like walked back in the door. I was like, okay, I can do this for one semester. Like art for me is my brain doesn't really wrap around it easily. And when I try to do something, I like to execute it like really, really well. So art is that quarter where I'm just like, oh no, this is going to show how much of a noob I am in all things artistic, which was true. And it did. But I took it all in grace, and I refined my map skills in terms of like setting up the design of the map and articulating and finding actually really, really good programs where you can build on your own and kind of design. It can help you create the boxes, or it can help you make the trees. Like again, childlike skills. So I had to kind of utilize my creative elements to make it look clean, yet also good enough for Dungeons and Dragons.
I am shocked that you guys had to do this much on the maps, though. Like I would have thought that you would have just put a bulleted list together and be like, there's some trees in the upper left and probably a school down here. Like you actually had to do more of that design.
I know for me is I had a really strong visual idea of how I wanted the day spa to be laid out, because the location was such an important part of my adventure that was the very first thing I did. Is I sat down and I sketched out, and it was on a piece of paper that I'd found near my desk, and I just sketched out a really rough kind of outline of everything and where I thought things should go. And then from there, I was like, okay, I've got, these many rooms. I want to have a treatment room. I want to have a pool. I want to have a this. I want to have a that. How can I then, what mechanics or fun things can I write in to make those fun? So for me, that was where I started. And then that was the easiest thing to develop from. And then I just did a nicer version with the programs Kelly mentioned, that because I can't draw to save my life. I was never going to be able to do that. But luckily, there's a lot of marvelous programs out there that you can use, and they'll do all the kind of actual artistic skill for you. I just needed the layout locked down. And then once I had that was easier to step forward on.
Yeah, I was just all world characters, completely going from that angle of my storytelling. And I love, I'm a big sandbox believer, laying things up and things are moving, but you can have fun and let your characters go where they will. And that was actually a difficult thing for me, because I was like, well, you can't sandbox here. You gotta get specific. You gotta tell your one-shot adventure. You gotta navigate that story in a way where it's we have these maps and I have these locations and these things are all happening. So when they occur, when they walk into it, great, pull up those materials and let's go. This is much more narratively driven. So my maps for me were kind of the very end, and the sort of firming up of okay, this and then this and then this.
Wow. I would feel the same way. I'm anxious hearing you talk about having to do that.
Yeah, for me, the visual of where things are laid out is where storytelling, at least in D&D, comes from for me. Like, it doesn't need to be pretty, and it often isn't. But yeah, like you, I have to lean on those online tools, and then I'm like, oh yeah, take someone else's trees and put them in there, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh great, that works wonderfully. So yeah, that's really cool to be able to come from, transferring something from paper to what it's going to end up being in print in play for thousands of fans potentially on March 16th is got to be really gratifying, right? Yeah.
Terrifying, but gratifying. Yes. Terrifying, but gratifying. For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I guess because the two of you have spent so much time in front of the camera performing, like, as Greg said, very well-known dungeon masters for, very popular gaming groups. This is like, does this feel like a whole new level of nerves that you're tapping into because now it's your writing that's getting put out there? Is it?
I'll let Mark take it.
Yeah.
Well,
Mark's nodding. Mark's nodding.
Mark's nodding.
Yes, it is.
For me, it's one of the most incredible things I've been, able to do as part of the D&D community and being, involved in the industry and doing all these live streams. This is the most terrifying thing I've done. Like, put me on stage in front of 20,000 people on Twitch, no problem. Honestly, fine. Write something that other people are going to play and use and judge from a kind of skill level. That terrifies me. that really, I'm very anxious about it. And especially the adventure I've written is a little bit different. And, it tackles a couple of themes that aren't traditional D&D things. There's definitely a little bit of fear with that. I'd much rather, I could get up there and play naked with Chris Perkins, and I'd prefer that in a way. I'd rather that, because that's the stage persona can take on that. This is very much an internal Mark thing. So yeah, I'm very scary. I don't know how you feel, Kelly.
I mean, last year, I think there was a lot of pressure, and I was putting pressure on myself in a unique way because I am a storyteller and a professional writer. So my experience comes like with putting a pen to paper. Easy, got it, can deliver, can tell a story, can describe things, can do things that I know people will enjoy because I have exercised that skill for 10 years now. However, in terms of the sort of like moving from being a DM and having fun with friends and being able to kind of translate that into a professional arena, which has been amazing, to take that to the next skill and then actualize that in written word for me is always like the penultimate sort of like it's just a big responsibility. And so I was not just thinking of myself while I was approaching it. I was thinking of all the other doors that were opening for people. And that's where my anxiety came from. It came from, oh my gosh, this is such a great opportunity. What can I do to build bridges and make magic? So that was where, and it's so funny because if you had asked me a year ago, are you anxious? Are you this? I would have said yes. But I've spent the last year in a lot of therapy. Everybody's therapy is great.
Nice.
And anxiety, if you can work on it, and build from it, it can be you can live with it. You can learn. So that's where I'm coming from on that. Cause it's like, I'm actually really excited. Nervous a little bit. Yes, but more excited.
Well, and I think that's really important for people to hear, right? Like, because, you might look from the outside looking in, you two might seem like you've got it made, right? Like all these, I'm on these shows, I'm in cameras, I'm, everything is great. And then I don't think people realize how, nerve-wracking it can be to switch mediums or to just do something that's outside of any type of comfort zone whatsoever. That's hard. I mean, you see it in sports with, Michael Jordan trying baseball and, people who are known for being actors trying to do music and vice versa and expanding out there. And I think it's really important to realize that challenge is what makes us human. It's why our D&D characters are the way they are, and they're doing it too. And it's okay to strive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a little just addendum to it. But when I got the email from Chris and Bill that was like, hey, we'd like you to work on this, I actually replied back and said, have you guys sent this to the wrong person? Are you sure this was meant for me? Because I genuinely, it's being a DM on stream for your group of friends is a very, very different thing to writing a published D&D adventure. And I genuinely was like, oh, maybe I think they've sent this to the wrong person. And then, luckily I had Bill and Chris come back and say like, no, we did mean to send it to you.
You're not Mark Hulmes? Oh,
yeah. Oh, no,
sorry.
we've sent it. This was meant for Matt Hulmes. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no worries. So, yeah.
That's literally imposter syndrome too, right? Like that's like, oh, wait, no, I'm not the right person. You're thinking of someone else.
Sounds cool for Mike Hulmes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I will always remember, Mr. Mercer saying that when we did one of our biggest events in Seattle for the Stream of Annihilation. He was like, this is the largest concentration of people with imposter syndrome in one place.
Yeah.
And it was.
It really was. Yeah.
All of us were like, I can't believe this is happening. And
I shouldn't be here.
That was like
why am
5
I?
years ago, and it's still people still feel that way, about where their places are in just this industry as well as in show business in general. And Kelly, you were talking about how amazing it was that you're getting a lot of things going on. Like, can you talk a little bit about what it's been like to go on that 10-year journey and get the musical, getting the notoriety it has, and all the amazing stuff that's going alongside of your RPG career here?
It's been a wild journey. I'm not from the industry. I didn't even know that there was fields. I didn't know that you could become a semi-professional Dungeons and Dragons player. Like that's crazy.
That still blows me away too.
What? But I also had that same standing to television writing back in the day. Like I was like, wait, you can become a professional television writer? Like that same sort of shock was my approach, because I come from a very small town in upstate New York. My whole family, upstate. I went to Syracuse.
I'm from
so my family's from Buffalo. Oh, no way. My whole family's from Buffalo, Rochester. So you are on our homelands, because I'm Haudenosaunee. So you're from where my people are from, which is really exciting. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Especially during the fall, that area is just stunning. Yep. But if you can imagine growing up there for 20 plus years.
I can.
Yes. This is all pretty hard to wrap your mind around. So, as I had started to navigate the professional television film space, I had to put a lot of seeds. I had to plant a lot of seeds in order to see them grow. And through a series of hard work and just kind of flailing about in the best I can, but creating a really beautiful network of support around me. I think that was the most important thing is, you see these people in the world and you say, how do I eventually, become like them? Or how do I get to do the things that they do? When I look back on it, it really is, yes, strive, but the communities you build around you and the people you keep around you, that's where all of that goodness is going to eventually come from. It's creating that sort of well of support. So now I'm at this point in my career where, like last year, I went from show to show to show to show. I got to write for Netflix's Spirit Rangers, which I really hope people can check out, because that's like the first all Native American animation writers' room show that's coming out, and the talent's Native, everybody involves Native. It is going to be revolutionary. So please check it out if and when. And also last year I got to write on like a live action show for the first time in my life. And like all of these are kind of coinciding. And it was right at the time that I also got offered a chance to write on a Dungeons and Dragons adventure book. So it was sort of, it's like a burden of riches, but it really is, especially during such a difficult time. I was like very overwhelmed by the graciousness and the kindness of those reaching out, and also in some ways not just thankful for the opportunities that was given me, but the opportunities and the things that are being discussed now on a larger level. I think that is, for me personally, my comfortability level and the door that was opened. It was perfect timing, because had you talked to me at the beginning of my career, maybe I wouldn't have had felt as secure as I do now to say, this is the stories I want to tell. Because I found myself, maybe when I first moved out to LA, I started telling stories, really trying to show and prove that I can mimic someone's voice, which is important in television writing. to show that you can write for your superiors or the people above you and make sure that their show is executed on a high level. But this D&D opportunity came at the perfect time in my career because I was like, you know what? There are certain stories I do want to tell that are not other people's stories, but stories for myself or stories to heal or stories of justice. And so it was kind of cool to have that all meet.
Yeah.
At that point.
Cool, man.
2020
during
was,
a pandemic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels like there was world
Cosmic
and
divergence, going on. Yeah, for sure.
Everything. Yeah. Mark, you were saying that it was also a good time for you? I saw you pointing to yourself. Were you saying like, that was for me too?
No, that was more like Kelly talking about she had stories she wanted to tell. Like she developed this skill of like mimicking other people. But, and I've met Kelly and we've spoken and I know that there are stories that are going to be important to you, and having the opportunity to tell the stories that are yours, like that was like, I'm really glad that you've gotten a chance to do that because
that's huge.
I think that's something that a lot of us get to do. We get to work for somebody else. We work on somebody else's game. We work on somebody else's show. We work on under somebody else, but there are always things that we ourselves want to put out there into the world. And it's, when you get those opportunities, that's an amazing thing. And I'm just really glad that Kelly, you got that opportunity to do that. So,
yeah.
I'm excited you did too with this D&D book of yours in the spa.
Yeah.
So it's like an extension of you in a good way.
Very much so. I think it kind of is interesting in a way because it came at a period of time where, I've been, if anybody who follows me on Twitter, especially in the last couple of years, will find out I've been getting really into doing more costume play and stuff like that. And especially cosplaying female characters, which is something where, I've done this a little bit in theater and things like that before. But actually part of this adventure is kind of all about recognizing that there are things that you want to change about yourselves and sometimes you can't, but in a world of magic, maybe you can. And there's definitely a little element of that in there. And there's definitely a little element of me kind of putting some of that in there as well. So it was kind of very nice and therapeutic for me as well.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds amazing. And when spas reopen, I'm gonna LARP. I'm gonna LARP your adventure.
That would be interesting. You let me know how that goes, Shelley.
I can't wait.
I feel like there's stuff in there you're not telling us about on purpose. That you're like, maybe not, Shelley. Maybe you don't want to.
Lovely break, lovely vacation at the day spa, the magic day spa. Definitely.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
No monsters or any bandits. Nothing like that.
No, not the spas I go to.
Now I want to be like, here we found something. It's a beholder eye. Do you want us to remove that for you?
The eye.
So are you saying the next D&D live event is just going to be at a spa with Shelley?
If it were up to me,
yeah. At least a part of it.
That's
secluded off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they don't put me in charge of events.
It's true.
They should.
I think we pitched that for part of our event around Icewind Dale. I think I wanted to have make it a getaway at like some ski resort, and then be like, hey, it'll have all of the accoutrements of a ski resort, including spas and saunas and all that stuff, and have it all decked out for D&D stuff. That would have been my dream.
That's great.
Yeah. And then the pandemic. So what are you gonna do?
We'll get the spa.
Spin.
One
day
eventually
we'll get it. Yeah.
D&D spa will open.
So both of you are writers, obviously. Mark, you say you're a fledgling writer, but I think you're a little more than that.
Okay. Thank you.
But I'm curious because I don't know, never written an adventure, but what is different about writing an adventure, or what's the same with the types of writings that you've done before? What was that process like for you guys?
Yeah, Kelly, go for it.
Oh, I was so engaged with Mark, hearing the question thrown at Mark that I was just like, I'm excited to hear Mark say it. Can you read? No, literally, I was like watching. I was like, yeah. Can you rephrase that, Shelley, for me? I'm so sorry.
Like really terrible. Also, when we have multiple guests, especially being totally virtual, because I'm like looking at like one of you, but you don't know who I'm looking at. You don't know where my eyes are. So just asking, because you're both have done a lot of writing and a lot of mediums and a lot of different types of writing. So how is adventure writing different, or maybe it's the same of some of those other types of writings? Because I have no idea how you would even start this process.
I mean, for me, like adventure writing is incredibly different than every single type of writing that I've ever done. I did like write some like adventure, small things for like Xander, who once actually ran one of my games for the Midwestern Moms little show that he did for D&D a couple years back.
That was one of yours?
Yeah, I wrote that for him.
Wasn't LaRue was part of that?
She was. It was a totally different story, but I've always had a little bit of a unicorn agenda. So
also a great name for an adventure, the unicorn,
or a ska band,
or a TV show.
Right. Into it. Yes, the unicorn agenda has been a long time coming, and so with all of that, I had some experience in that space, but it does take, you really do have to sit down and formulate and think about the beats of where everyone's going to be going. Now, the beats is actually maybe one of the strongest things that translates from the television writing space into the adventure writing space. But in terms of formatting or in terms of storytelling, you have to think in different perspectives with adventure writing. Like, not only do you have to do like kind of like a bird's eye view, but you have to do like also, first person perspective and then second person perspective. And then third, like you're just shifting different perspectives and tones in your writing. So you can think player, you can think DM, you have to think world, you have to think storytelling. So it requires a brain who also enjoys, I would say, the mechanics. So that's why it was really exciting as a DM to implement the mechanic love that I have against the storytelling love I have.
Yeah, so you have to think about what there's no protagonists, right? So you have to be like, I have to set this up for any number of protagonists who might latch on to different story elements of these beats and make sure that there's stuff in there for them to digest. Is that kind of the gist of the difference there?
Yeah. I just was also going to say there was no room for musical numbers in a book. So
one day we'll have a musical themed something around Dungeons
You
and
have been
Dragons.
talking about a musical D&D thing as long as I have known you, Greg Tito. I think every time I've come on Dragon Talk or like spoken to you in an interview, it's come up. Yeah, this one is the one you need to speak to. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. I always want it.
The other thing with writing I felt is not only do you have like a number of protagonists, but you have all the different player types as well. So when I was coming to sit down, like you have the player who wants to turn up and they want to kill monsters, right? That's what they want to do. They want to swing their axe and kill monsters. You have the player who wants to explore and learn. You have the player who's the actor who wants to talk with every NPC and play out their character. You have the person who just wants to sit back and eat chips and take notes and just be part of the social group. And trying to write an adventure where you're not just hitting those narrative beats and you're not just giving the descriptions and the mechanics and the little fun sidebars, but trying to keep all of that in mind with the different styles of DM that might be playing, the different types of player that might be playing. That is such a challenge. Like trying to make sure that you're giving them everything they could want, especially when you've only got that one short adventure to do it in. If you've got a whole campaign book, well, maybe one session, one player gets, what they want in it. The next session maybe is a bit more tailored to that player or that type of DM. Whereas in this, you got to hit everybody at once. It's got to be a shotgun, scatter approach to make sure everybody has something fun they can do. That was a real challenge for sure.
Yeah, that sounds awful. I'll just stick to writing Bachelor recaps. But I'm hearing
There's different Bachelor readers, though, Shelley. You need to be able to make sure you're getting the ones that just want the fights. You want the ones that want to know about the character.
Right. Do you just want to hear the top view, or do you want me to really dig into their outfits and what they
Chris Harrison view? Yeah.
Right. Chris's perspective. So hearing you talk about Mark now, do you think that is true for all adventure writings, the way you're describing, like thinking about all the different types of players that might interact with your adventure? Or do you think that you're approaching adventure writing that way because of your DM background? Because that's very much how a dungeon master might be running a game at a table.
I think 100%. I think 100% that's probably my DM instincts, as well as, I have my regular group of players that I have for high rollers. They're all different types. I know them at the table, and I know the one who is really invested in the lore and she wants to know everything about the world. I know the one who just wants to fight stuff and make stupid jokes. And so when I came to sit down, and I've played in games with friends, not on stream, and I've played, with a bunch of other streamers, and I did think, I guess, I'm too much of a people pleaser where I want everyone to like my adventure. So I was just like, everyone must love this. I must try and do something for everyone. And so tried to kind of launch it wide. And I think that, that whole DMing mentality is definitely going to have an effect and definitely influence that writing for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something which everybody would be like, especially
like a good dungeon master.
Well, yeah. And when the topic is a magical day spa, I don't want people to be turned off by it and say oh, that sounds boring. I wanted there to be that when they arrive, they're like, oh, this is cool. And oh, I can do this. And there's something that they can still engage with for sure.
Yeah. I would definitely just jump on that and say, I think very similarly to make sure that everyone has a really great experience. But I was also thinking a little bit in the back of my mind because I had to, which was, man, if I was a kid and I wanted to play this, what do I want? And I really did go into a little bit more of I did the Pixar take on the 4-quadrant Pixar take because I wanted to include, and that's a television thing for you, 4 quadrants. It's good fun. But it means that it's accessible to everybody because I really did want to open up those doors and think okay, what would teens want to play? What would kids want to play? What would young girls want to play? What would women want to play? Because oftentimes there's a lot of story building that's super exciting and there's a lot of action, but I was thinking, okay, I am this. So how do I kind of put a little edge on that and maybe lean a little, that.
Absolutely.
A lot of click sounds. And the shoulder is very important as well.
This is where the number begins. This is where the Broadway number starts. Where
I can see it happening.
Adventure writer. You're an adventure. We need you to write that book, please. It's not good.
Based on your ska dancing, Greg, I want a ska number from you in the D&D musical.
Yeah.
Your little skanking you were doing. Yeah.
I always thought, I'm not musical at all. I'm a big fan of music, but I don't have any talent. But I could be that guy that dances for the ska band. That's my contribution.
And you're just there dancing away.
I'll be your hype man for sure. So what's also really interesting about these 2 adventures is that they're short, right? They're self-contained. And that, that's one of the selling points is that you'll be able to, pick them up and play them in a session or 2. But that must have been a different approach for you as writers too, because you can have, it's like, short stories are to novels and short films are to longer films and, a single episode of television versus an entire, series of all these things going on. Right. So what was it like kind of curtailing all right, I'm going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end that may even happen in 2 hours? Kelly, I'll go back to you again.
For me personally, I had to think sort of linearly as to how do you tell a satisfying story that can contribute to somebody else's narrative, because this isn't going to be the only thing that's played. Maybe there is a world where someone just wants to pick up a one shot and just run it, for a day or something, or maybe 2 nights, with friends. But I think that on the flip side, you kind of want to think, how can this, like Mark was talking about, how can you allow this to be something that's inserted into a story to enrich a player's experience or a DM's world building, or to give context to another adventure that they might want to go off and tell themselves, or maybe help, for example, if somebody's character is an elf and you want to do lore work, this is another sort of avenue you can do. It just opens up the doors for deities and backstories and character discovery. It also implements and allows people to level up. It also allows people to fight and perhaps get items and get really, really cool things on their journeys. So you can just use it in a more utilitarian way as well. But in terms of writing, you had to think concisely in terms of risk, reward, story, ending, adventure, finale. So you kind of had to go through that build and the dichotomy and service it in a concise, every sentence punch in and packing in a ton of material so you can kind of sink your teeth into it and play.
Yeah, that must have been a real challenge figuring out what stuff to include and what not to include. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my very first draft was 4,000 words over the limit. When I first wrote it, I was nearly 50% over because there was just so much I wanted to put into it. And I think what I ended up doing.
Kelly's face is amazing.
I know. This is the difference between writer who writes for a living and me. Where I was just like, bah! And then eventually I was like, oh no, I've gone well over here. But yeah, what I ended up doing, and I think it's where my adventure maybe is going to be a little bit different, is it has a beginning. It has like a very clear beginning of how you get to the adventure and everything else. But then it becomes more of a location, and it's the kind of thing where you could play it as a one-shot where everything gets resolved in one adventure. And I think the DM can definitely run it that way. But it's also a place that I kind of wrote in a way that maybe players go there, they maybe just explore it, figure it out, go, oh, this is cool, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe they go back there later on. Maybe they go back there in future and maybe, something's changed, or maybe they want to go back there and get something that was talked about, or maybe they don't quite pick up on all the elements of the mystery and are called back to it when something happens. So it was difficult to pen in a really solid kind of like a very final ending to it. It has an ending. It has ways that the problems can be resolved, but those might not happen in the same session that you go to the location, or you might stumble into it immediately and then everything kind of like wraps up from there. But it was a big challenge to try and get a full sort of like beginning, middle, end into that for me personally. I've done a lot of one shots for streams and shows and adventures and things like that, and like events and things like that I've run. And the hardest thing for me is always containing it to that 2 hours, 3 hour session, because I'm so used to running long form campaigns. I mean, our High Rollers campaigns were like 2 years, 3 years, hundreds of episodes, constantly evolving and progressing and things like that. So, it was very hard to kind of suddenly come back in and be like, I've got to get everything into this one short adventure. So I tried to kind of work around that by making it a place that you don't have to cover in one shot. You could come back to, or it could be part of a longer campaign. It's a cool place to visit with stories attached to it and stuff that can happen there.
I like that. I like that. And you keep saying it's an odd adventure because of the day spa setting, but I mean, it combines so much of the things that I think players maybe not admit to themselves that they like, which is going shopping and just having 100%. Those downtime role-playing sessions can sometimes be the most memorable, and that's a perfect place to insert something like this. Even 3 or 4 sessions ahead of time, you're like, oh yeah, you're walking by the street and you see this location
place.
Yeah, and you're intrigued, and maybe you can have some hooks there. Yeah,
those are some of my favorite episodes to GM and play in, and really giving the characters a chance to let their personality show. Because when you're in the middle of a dungeon or a big epic quest, sometimes it's very easy to focus on that. Whereas I think the downtime stuff, when you're just in a city and you have a couple of days to spare, the players get to make the choices that really showcase who they are. And I think that this kind of location is going to be the same kind of deal as well. That's what I'm most excited to see people play it do, is how their characters all interact with the spa, and there's a lot of very interesting NPCs that they can meet there. And that's my favorite thing in D&D is always NPC PC relations and how people talk to characters and how they respond to them. It's my absolute favorite thing. So that was a big factor for me too.
Nice. And of course, Candlekeep is a big part of this, right? With the idea that there is a library that holds all of these books that are the kind of through line through each one of their adventures. So it's easy to insert or find out one of these tomes through any type of everybody's got a major repository of knowledge somewhere in their world, or should be. If you don't have that, you should get on putting that in your game right now. So yeah, how much of this is nostalgic, at least on the library side of thing? I have a feeling that the two of you were pretty bookish growing up.
Oh, call me out, why don't you?
Well, I'm calling myself out too.
I had very few friends, but one of my good friends was the librarian at my local library. I
That's the
wanted
best.
to be Matilda, so I literally went every single day after school. I'm from a small town again, so I had this little elementary school, and kids just roamed around because it was the 90s and things were different, I guess. Or maybe parents just didn't care, and parental supervision was very lax. So after elementary school, I would obviously not have any friends to play with, so I would just walk exactly like from the middle elementary school to the high school, and right there was the library. So I just spent every single day at the library on end. So I love libraries. So the chance to expand on that sort of reverence of Candlekeep and maybe the people who went there to preserve knowledge or history and have made sure that these books, especially the book that I wrote, make sure that it was preserved and safe and contained and protected and all that good stuff. I love it, obviously. Libraries are great, you guys.
They are. I agree.
Shout out to libraries.
We love you,
Shout out to
libraries.
Shelley, do you think it's okay to tell people about our love of libraries?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead. This was your idea.
Oh, that one. I'm like,
yeah.
God, Greg, why wouldn't we tell people
I
we
was
love
bumping this up for you to like, oh yeah,
It was the volleyball spike. I could see, Greg
and
throwing
then
it up,
I
and
was
then
like,
Shelley's like,
looking out
Are
you
the
throwing a ball
stands.
in the
Is
air
my
right
mom here? Is my mom watching me? Oh, I missed it. Sorry. Yes, because we love libraries so much, and we love all of the wonderful authors that were contributing to this book, Candlekeep Mysteries. We are making a very substantial D&D book, board game, card game, resource donation to a library of your choice for all of the contributors. So they will, whatever library you choose, they'll know that this is coming on your behalf and that you are one of the authors in this wonderful newly released D&D book. So hopefully when people are able to visit libraries again, and they'll have that front and center, and maybe you can even go and sign a copy or do an event at your library, and we just want to be able to like kind of create little Candlekeeps all over the world. So
and lots of little Matildas.
And little Matildas. I know, knowing that there's going to be like little Matilda sitting in those libraries every day. And the library, of course, is a place where we know lots of people do discover D&D for the first time. So we
included.
That's magical. Hopefully they can discover D&D there, and then they won't spend hours of time after spending hours at the library going home and staring at a glass of milk and trying to make it move with their mind into cereal.
Can you pour some water in here, please, Kelly, while you have a second?
Yeah, I was going to say, sounded very personal there.
Come on, it's not working. Back
Delicious.
to the library you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but yeah.
And then we're excited to be able to do that to one in your home area as well, Mark. I think we were asking about like international. I'm like, yes, we can do it in the UK. Everywhere has libraries.
Oh, I'm gonna have the problem is I have to pick one of the many places that because I've grown up and lived in so many cities. It's gonna be hard to try and pick one now. That's the hardest thing.
Oh, are you talking to the girl who picked out 8 different tribal reservation libraries?
Hey, that's awesome. Yeah.
Did you see that little note where it's like, can you just give me a priority list of which ones you want me to start with?
Yeah. You just
Mark,
narrow it down a little bit.
And both of you, luckily we have a randomizing tool in our toolbox, so you can create a list, even just 1d3 and roll.
Greg,
and see which one
based
gets
on
it.
my dice rolling for my games, it's not that random. whatever the highest digits on the dice, when I'm a DM, I only roll high. It's the worst thing that my players hate is I just never seem to roll below a 10 when I'm DMing. As a player, never above a 10, but as a DM, always 10 or above.
You got to check the dice you're using.
Yeah, I think so.
Speaking of DMing.
That's why you call the show that. Now I totally get it.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm the only high roller in
You're
the party.
high
Everybody
roller.
else is a low roller. Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense now. Will you, or maybe you already have, but do you think you'll be dungeon mastering your own adventures? Or is that too weird? Or is that cool? What's that like?
I mean, I certainly will
Sorry.
be.
I never.
No, yeah.
I'm looking at you, Mark.
Yeah, that was like, I don't know who she's talking to. And Kelly's like, she doesn't look like she's about to say something.
sorry.
So Zoom etiquette implies I will speak. Yay for pandemics and Zoom meetings. No, I most certainly will be. So I'm gonna be running it for a fair few people, publicly as well as privately. So it looks like they may be doing something with the PAX Australia crew. There may be a little teaser of my adventure coming out for some stuff with those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Comic Relief. We're doing this competition that I mentioned earlier. You can win. I'll be DMing it for the prize winner and some friends.
Oh, you're going to DM this
Warwick
adventure.
Castle. Yeah, I'm DMing.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to figure out a way to enter that contest.
Just have an awesome castle day in the UK. I mean, it's an
like,
amazing event. Like,
I have to.
I think you do have to quit your job and move to the UK, Shelley, I'm afraid.
And then get rehired after the event? We'll see.
Well,
okay.
You can see.
Seems shady.
Sounds awesome.
Seems shady.
But if you ever visit the UK, I do highly recommend Warwick Castle. It's somewhere that as a kid you go to and you're like, this is awesome. It's real D&D.
Yes.
Warwick Castle is so cool. I've been there before during my travels. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
I was there in college.
I have one funny story about Warwick Castle, which is when Matt Mercer came over. He used to come over for some conventions, and I would basically be like his liaison, and it'd be a chance for us to hang out, basically. And he was obsessed with Warwick Castle because they have a real trebuchet there, and he was like, "I want to go see the trebuchet. I want to see the trebuchet." So we took him on a train. We took him to Warwick Castle, and they do this little tour of the dungeons of Warwick Castle that you can go on. It's kind of like, people are dressed up and they've got mannequins and all this kind of stuff in there.
The mannequins are a little creepy, I gotta tell you.
They are very creepy. Yeah. And one of these mannequins, we get into this room. It's this dark tower and they've got these animatronics and mannequins and they're telling this thing. And I'm there kind of like leaning against the wall, just like, it's not even that scary. And then one of these mannequins turns around and comes alive because it was a real person, a real woman in a costume. And I jumped about 50 feet in the air. I nearly punched Matt in the back of the head because I was just like, and I just kind of swung. And it was a whole mess. And so that's my fun Warwick Castle story.
Well, luckily we'll be able to include that in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft.
Yeah. If there was any part of Van Richten's guide that I'd write for that, it would 100% be some scary mannequin coming to life as a real woman and terrifying you. But yeah, I'll be running the game at that.
There was a movie about that?
Oh, probably. Oh, God. And I think ever since then, I've had a real problem with mannequins and acting like humans ever since, because that made my heart jump. And then also Knights of Evening Star. I will probably be sending the Knights of Evening Star crew to the Temple of the Restful Lily. So you can come and check that out as well. What about you, Kelly?
Yeah, for me right now, I am waiting to do it at an opportune moment. It's kind of special for me personally, where I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. Like I kind of want to share it or share the first time I run it with probably Girls Guts Glory, to be honest with you guys, or ND&D. Who's the all-native group that I've been playing with in my own free time, which has been really lovely. I also might want to save it for like kids and a chance to really run it for some up-and-comers who are really, really excited about it. I just love including women and children in it. So that's sort of my hope, is when I first run it, it's going to be sort of like a spiritual experience. Because I will sing, I will add the musical numbers, and I can't just do that. Yeah.
We'll get the angelic chorus. It'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm so excited to run it. And I actually am really excited to hear about other people running it. Like I'm excited to do it, but I just can't wait to hear how people, like what people do and the choices they make. And that's where I'm sitting on the edge of my seat right now as the storyteller. I'm like,
big same, big same.
Yeah, that's got to be exciting.
Yeah.
I can't wait either. March 16th is when people will get it in their hands. There's 2 amazing covers. The alt cover looks fantastic, as well as the standard cover. I love the image of the art. It kind of looks like my library a little bit here. So I can't wait for more people to jump into your stories, very soon. Gosh, I think, it'll be less than a week away by the time people are listening to this.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
So excited. I can't wait to play everybody else's adventures.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. Everybody else's
I want to read everybody else's and play through everybody else's as well. That's a big one. There's so many great adventures in there for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you to the both of you for contributing, during a hard year like 2020 and working on this, as well as, making sure everyone was able to kind of learn about these adventures by talking to us here, as well as on all the interviews and things that you're doing. We really appreciate it. And I'm hoping it becomes like an inroads for more, young people to kind of see how get that push to create and make things and, use your imagination all over the world. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you guys. Thank you for having us on to talk about it.
Well, you said you want to hear from people who have run your adventures. So where can people find you? And I will ask you, Kelly, first. I'm looking at you.
Okay. I can feel it. Like Matilda. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kelly Lynne Dang, KELLYLYNNEDANG. And that is my handle.
Love it. Love it. And what about you, Mark?
People can find me mainly on Twitter. I am an absolute Twitter fiend. You can find me on there. It's at Sherlock_Hulmes, which is HULMES. It's Sherlock Holmes, but with a U instead. It's the easiest way to remember it. Or on Instagram, I'm the same username. The other one is you can check out my D&D show, which is High Rollers D&D, which obviously I run, and you can message me on there as much as well and follow that for all of our updates and stuff too. But yeah, Sherlock_Hulmes, pretty much everywhere on the internet.
Beautiful. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for people to discover the mysteries that are within.
And you both did a very good job about not spoiling what the mysteries were. So
I know.
Kudos to you.
Hard.
A real skill.
I want people to know what happens.
I can't wait.
They will soon. Soon.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Soon.